Right, so we're now live, Chair. So, good morning and welcome. This is Natasha Prosser from Governance Services, and under agenda item number 1, Councillor Lennox was nominated as Chair prior to the start of the meeting. Can I just ask all members if they are agreeable? Councillor Flynn, Councillor Wenham?
Yes.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lennox is formally elected as Chair, so Councillor Lennox, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this remote hearing of the Licensing Subcommittee. I'm Councillor Jessica Lennox, and I've been elected as Chair of today's hearing. Before I proceed, could I just remind everyone that this meeting is being streamed live on the City Council YouTube channel, and could I just ask my colleagues, members of the panel, to introduce themselves? Billy?
Councillor Billy Flynn from Adlam Wharfdale Ward.
Thank you. Angela?
Councillor Wenham from Duranghair Ward.
Fantastic. So we'll start by confirming that this meeting of the subcommittee, the licensing subcommittee, meets the requirements of the council's constitution, even though members of the panel are in remote attendance. While items today will be fully discussed as is usual, remote attendance requires a few slight changes to how we'll manage the debate. Therefore, can all attendees please mute their microphones until they're invited to speak? And this will avoid background noise and disruption. Can all participants please keep their cameras on during the hearing? And all participants will be invited to introduce themselves at the start of the hearing to make it clear to our public observers who will be involved in the proceedings. So thanks for everyone's patience, and hopefully we can get along without too many snags. Could I now invite officers to introduce yourselves and to mute your microphone once you've finished? So we'll start with Philippa.
Yes, it's Philippa Murray from Legal Services. I'm here to advise this committee today.
Okay, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm Matthew Nelson. I'm part of Entertainment Licensing. Thank you.
Okay, Natasha.
Natasha Prosser, Governance Services and Clerk for today's hearing.
Okay, and I think that's everyone. Rob, do you need to introduce yourself, or?
Robert Brown, Legal Services, but I'm just here as an observer.
Okay, that's fine. I think that's everyone on my list anyway now. Could I ask the applicant and their representatives to please introduce themselves? So, Mr. Pinder.
I'm Neil Ford. I'm the licensing advisor, so I'll be presenting the case.
Okay, all right then, and we've got Mr. Pinder here as well. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Pinder is one of the owners, so he will be here to answer any questions about the site specifically.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so back over to the clerk.
Thank you, Chair. So moving to agenda item number 2, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Under agenda item number 3, there are no items which require the exclusion of the press and public. Under agenda item number 4, there are no formal late items. However, members have received some supplementary information regarding agenda item number 6. And under agenda item number 5, could I please ask for members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests?
No disclosable interests.
Thank you. I'll take that as none.
Yeah, none from me.
None from me, none.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to agenda item number 6. So this is an application for the grant of a premises licence for the Crown, 128 High Street, Boston Spa, Wetherby. Could the legal advisor to the subcommittee please outline the procedure for the hearing?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The usual procedure for such applications is that the applicant addresses the committee first. If there are representations made by those, then those making representations would address the committee. After that, the applicant has the chance to respond to anything said in the verbal presentation. Ordinarily, representations would be dealt with the police first. In this case, the West Yorkshire Police have indicated that they are content that the applicant has agreed to the measures that they suggested. Subsequent to the police, there would be representations from other agencies, but again here, environmental health have suggested conditions which have been accepted by the applicant. And following that, members of the public who would who had submitted comments and who wished to appear could address the committee. So today there are no objectors present. The West Yorkshire Police and Environmental Health having been in agreement with the applicant, and those members of the public who did submit written comments have elected not to appear before the committee. In making its determination, the subcommittee will consider what is appropriate and proportionate to promote the licensing objectives, and those objectives are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. The regulations permit the subcommittee to set a time limit on representations, provided that the same time limit is applied to all parties, and it is usually 15 minutes per party. The applicant, if the applicant wishes, can split that time so that they have perhaps 10 minutes for the initial representations, and then possibly a further period of time, say 5 minutes, to respond to any of the questions or any of the representations that might have been discussed or put. Could I ask the subcommittee if they wish to impose a time limit of 15 minutes or possibly a different time?
Well, 15 minutes usually works. I expect the applicant hopefully will be able to manage their presentation in that time. So, I mean, if 15 minutes goes, if we go past 15 minutes, we'll call time, but I think hopefully you should manage that within that time.
So, okay, thank you, Chair. So a 15-minute time limit will apply. Can I, after the presentation, the subcommittee members may wish to ask questions of the applicant. The time for questions to be asked and to be answered is in addition to the time limit set for the presentation. Could I perhaps ask the applicant's representative, do you want to split your time so that you can sum up your application following questions and discussion?
I think we probably only need a couple of minutes to sum up. I think I'm basically going to rely on the supplementary statement that we sent in. So hopefully, if all the members have read the supplementary statement, I will literally just go through and pull out the key points. So hopefully I might not even need the full 15 minutes. So
Okay.
as long as everyone's read the additional agenda, I will just go through and highlight the key points and as part of the application, if that's okay.
That sounds
you
good
do
to
want
me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you do want to split your time to an extent, but perhaps
Yeah.
just a short time at the
Yeah.
end.
Yes.
Thank you. And please do note, we don't permit cross-examination in subcommittee. If you feel that there is a crucial question that needs to be asked and to be answered, please don't ask directly, but instead make a request to the chair who will decide whether or not that question should be put. You are able to call witnesses. Do you have any witnesses that you do wish to call today?
Mr. Pinder is also attending the hearing. I think that I will do the presentation, and then if any of the members or legal have any specific questions about the site that he might be able to answer, I will get him to answer those. Obviously, during these times, I haven't actually done a site visit, so I think it's one of those difficult things that's quite unique to these types of hearings. So Mr. Pinder would be better off answering maybe some of the direct questions about the premises.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And all documents that have previously been submitted have been copied and circulated to the subcommittee in advance. If I may, I'll confirm that we all have the same original pack with the agenda, and it comprises the agenda, the report to the subcommittee, the report concerning this application, and it's 66 pages long. So I hope we all have that same pack.
I can confirm that's what I'm working to.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up.
Can I perhaps interrupt myself? I've got an additional person appearing as attending just a telephone number. Do we know?
Yeah, there's a phone number ending in 886, which obviously this is a public. That's fine, but we want to work out who all the names on here are. Can you hear us?
I think it's Mr. Pinder. Mr. Pinder, is that
It
you?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm having some usual technology problems. So yeah, I'm using my phone, but I'm also watching the video.
No, thank you very much. Sorry to have interrupted there. The additional things that I have some supplementary information, a plan of the premises, councillors, I think, have been circulated additional copies of the letters from objectors. Can I perhaps check that we do all have those items?
Yes.
I'll take that we all have. Additional documents may now only be tabled with the consent of all of the parties. Can I ask, are there any additional documents that you would ask to be considered?
We just, as long as the supplementary information that's been circulated, that's the only additional paperwork that we were submitting with this application.
Right, thank you. Please note your presentation is your only opportunity to address the subcommittee. There's no further right to sum up your case, so you need to make sure you have said everything you want to say, and to have taken into account during your presentation. After all the parties have made representations, and after the questions have been dealt with and considered by members, members will consider whether they have all the information they require to make the decision. Once this point is reached, members of the committee will go into a private session. If members do have additional questions to ask, they will come back to the meeting to ask those questions. Members will then return to a private session to make their decision. Would all parties please remain in the meeting until they are asked to leave? And parties will be informed once the hearing is ended and will be advised of the decision in writing within 5 working days of today's date. Can I ask if there are any representations about the procedure to be followed before we begin the rest of the hearing? I'll take out that there aren't representations. No. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I think Philip has covered the questions. So just, are there any further questions at all, either to the applicant or about sorry, no, I'm reading the wrong bit. I've jumped a step. Right, okay, then in that case, we are just over to you then. So Mr. Ford, Mr. Pinder, if you can put your case, as we said, you've got 15 minutes, but you've chosen to take. Sorry, Matthew.
Excuse me, Chair. Yeah, I just need to outline the license application.
Apologies, I'm running along on my script. The script is fine, it's me that's wrong. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry about that. All right, thank you, Chair. So just to give a brief overview of the application that's being applied for. It's an application for the grant of a premises license. It's made for the Crown, High Street, Boston Spa, Wetherby, and the premises proposed to operate as a local public house. Although this is an application for the grant of a premises license, the premises have previously had the benefit of a premises license. This was granted in 2005 during the transitional period. However, the license was surrendered in 2019, and as far as we're aware, the premises have remained unused. So in summary, the application proposes sale by retail of alcohol, late night refreshment and regulated entertainment, the hours of which can be viewed at point 3.3 on page 8 of the report. Members should note that the hours mentioned in this section reflect reduced hours to those originally applied for, which is detailed further in the chain of emails from the applicant's representative attached to Appendix G on page 61 of the report. Also at 3.3 of the report are the non-standard timings that are being applied for. So the application has attracted representations from West Yorkshire Police and Environmental Health. In this instance, the operating schedule has been amended to include the agreed measures from both of them authorities. The ones for environmental health can be found at Appendix C on page 39 of the report, and West Yorkshire Police respectively on Appendix D, on page 43 of the report. So the application originally attracted representations from local ward councillors, but following recent discussions, these have now been withdrawn and they're no longer a matter for consideration. However, what is a matter for consideration is 8 outstanding representations received from local residents, which are contained within the report at Appendix F, starting on page 51. Finally, members should note that that located at Agenda Item 6 is supplementary information provided by the applicant. This includes witness statements, a letter sent to the objectors detailing the amended hours, agreements reached with West Yorkshire Police and Environmental Health, all the conditions offered and agreed, and confirmation from the ward councillors of their withdrawal of their representation. That, Chair, is the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now no more false starts. Okay, over to the applicant. Thank you for listening. Can I invite you now to present your case?
Yeah, so thank you for the officer. So as mentioned in the officer's report, this is a new application for the Crown on 128 High Street, Boston Spa. That the premises was previously licensed. The license was only surrendered in 2019, but the premises has actually been closed since 2012. Since it's been closed, the premises has been subject to 2 separate planning applications by 2 separate large chain supermarkets to try to convert what was a pub into a supermarket. Both of these applications were highly opposed by local residents, and the residents themselves, as stated in point 5 of my witness statement, actually registered this building as an asset of community value. So they have recognized its importance to the local community in remaining as a public house. So when we submitted this application in February of this year, we basically submitted the application on the same terms and conditions of the lapsed license in 2019. As we have stated in subsequent correspondence with the residents, it wasn't our intention to try to run a late night entertainment venue in this location. The premises is intended to be a community pub and an asset to the community. So the only reason the hours were originally put in and the activities were put in the original application was simply to replicate the license that had only recently lapsed. As part of the application, we did receive representations from both the police and the Council of Environmental Health. Both of these representations suggested additional conditions that to be incurred into our operating schedule. We have agreed both of these conditions, and both of these representations have been withdrawn. In respect of both parties, neither of them had actually opposed the original hours. So even though we were applying for later hours, which we have now pulled back, that both the police and the environmental health were satisfied that the later hours originally applied for could have been granted subject to the agreed conditions. I think it's key in respect of the police. The police have basically amended the original conditions that we suggested in respect of CCTV. What is quite important in relation to the environmental health conditions, which you will find, I think the easiest way of looking at them is on page 13 and 14 of the supplementary evidence, is that the environmental health conditions contain quite robust conditions in respect of the residential concern. So prior to having any recorded music or any regulated entertainment at the premises, these would all have to be put through noise control devices and would be set in conjunction with your officers. In addition, we have agreed to no external speakers, conditions in respect of bottling out, and limitations on hours of use for outside areas. So we feel that in agreeing all these extra conditions, there are a lot of safeguards that have been put into the application, which would promote the objectives of public nuisance. If we go back to the residential representations, I think we are in a difficult situation in respect of COVID. I think what would have normally happened in these circumstances, when we had all the letters and we had such a kind of concerns from the residents, when we did amend and when we did send the letters back out, we probably would have tried to have resident meetings and engage with these residents directly. I think it is acknowledged in your officer report, some of the residents are elder, so they might have actually appreciated having kind of one-to-one conversations with us in respect of what we intended. And unfortunately, due to the terrible situation we are in, that's something we haven't been able to do. We have actually contacted the residents twice. We sent the letter originally to the council in April to forward on to them, and then we actually posted the letter again ourselves. As you can see, the letter is attached. It was a very similar letter. Both times we have asked residents to try to contact us to discuss any of their concerns. So this isn't something where we aren't concerned. These are the people we want to be drinking and frequenting in the premises. Is that it is a community premises, and without the community buying into the premises reopening, we wouldn't have a business here. So we have done our best to try to allay the concerns. And even if you look at the representations, is that the representations aren't actually against the premises reopening itself. They were just, they had concerns about how it would be managed and the original late hours that were proposed, that both to this license application and the planning application that has been also granted to this premises, is that on a whole, all of the residents actually are supportive of the premises reopening. I think that especially in such difficult times, the fact that my clients are in a position to open the premises and provide employment and provide somewhere for the community to frequent should be welcome. The other thing that's probably worth noting, obviously it is a separate matter, but the application was subject to a planning application that was also granted. Now, in addition to having noise limiters set by your officers, actually every single part of the planning application will have to go back to your officers for scrutiny in relation to windows, glass. So this isn't an application where if it was granted, it will then, we will suddenly position to reopen. We have to go back and discuss every finer detail of the actual final works prior to reopening. So this is something that is also subject to additional scrutiny by your officers to make sure that all the residential community are protected and that we are able to open a successful business in this location without causing any of the concerns that were raised in the residential letters. I think that obviously we did have representations from a couple of the elected members, and as you can see, they were withdrawn, and as well as being withdrawn, they were actually quite supportive. And I think the fact that they've stated that it's great to have people willing to invest and have offered support to us. So I think that this is a difficult time, and it has been quite a long process since putting the application in to get to this. But I think that we want to reassure these are experienced operators, and they wouldn't be investing such large sums of money into reopening a premises that has been closed if they didn't want to open it properly and have it at the heart of the community. So I think that that's probably, obviously, there are significant conditions that we have proposed in the application. We feel that this deals with all the other licensing objectives. We have Challenge 25, we have conditions in respect of under 16s not being admitted. And again, these are experienced operators that have very robust policies and procedures. Unfortunately, the proposed DPS is currently furloughed, so he will be living on site with his small family. So this is not something that there is residential above, and they will be residing at the premises. So we would hope that the residents, when the premises reopen, hopefully if you grant the application, there will be a direct line of conversation with the manager, and hopefully that will form part of the community premises that we want to open. I think unless Mr. Pinder has anything to add, I think we're really just open to any questions.
Okay. Would Mr. Pinder like to say anything at this time, or should we move on to questions?
You can move on to questions, that's fine. I think now we've pretty much covered it all there, especially about the community aspect of what we're trying to do there. I think our manager there has also taken his children to the local school there, so they will be starting school in Boston Spa. So, you know, that's just another addition to what we're trying to achieve in Boston Spa.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to any questions from the subcommittee to the applicant. Would you like to start, Billy?
Yes, thanks, Jess. Thanks very much indeed, Mr. Ford. You went through the difficulties of contacting the local community very well, and we appreciate the difficulties that you've had. Looking at the location of the Crown in relation to nearby houses, you would be well aware that there are houses on sort of three sides, and Church Street, which runs up the side, is a very narrow road. A lot of the concern is about possible noise, disturbance, and one thing or another. And I just wondered if you had any plans in the future to try and talk to the residents about what you might or might not be able to do to alleviate any of the potential difficulties you may have.
Of course, I think that the second, I think we would aim to have a residents meeting before we reopen, to be honest. I think that would be the key. And even then, if we were in a position to reopen, the opening night would be a soft launch, and we would literally invite all the local community into the premises. We regularly at other sites have quarterly or residents meetings that anyone can attend and raise concerns directly. And obviously the designated premises supervisor would be happy to give his mobile phone number to any of the local residents to have any concerns. As I said, in a normal circumstances, we would have sat down and addressed these all with the residents directly, especially, so that it has been quite unfortunate, really, I think, for everyone concerned.
Okay, just one other thing. The only I accept that you've altered the hours of the original application, and you've met the various concerns of the representations that have been made. Just looking at the hours for your late night refreshment compared to other premises in the area, you're going for a midnight rather than, I think, midnight, which is what I think every other one of the local other licensing premises or premises serving food actually go to.
Mr. Peer, we're happy to pull that back to midnight. That it would only be for serving coffees after the alcohol hours. So it actually might be easier just to pull it back to midnight if you're happy with that. So it's not something that, if that's in line with the other hours, we'd be happy to amend that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a quick question that would be helpful to clarify. We've been provided with the plan of the site and where the application is for, and I know Mr. Ford's explained obviously difficulties with all of us, well, yourselves visiting and looking at that during this time. But could you just talk us through the clarified boundaries of what the application for the licensed premises is? How far does that go, including the beer garden, etc.? Is the licensing application for the whole footprint of the beer garden and the pub? What are you actually applying for in terms of that, please?
I think we have included the car park as part of the licensable area. I think so we have included that.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay, I'm just trying to pull it up with multiple screens. Okay, so the application for the licensing area is the whole of the footprint, including the car park. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think this was just for flexibility. I think the intention wouldn't be necessarily, it was just on the odd occasion if there was a community event. So if we wanted to utilize the space, but it would not, the intention wouldn't be to have that permanently. It was just for flexibility for anything going forward.
Okay, thank you. And your answer there actually brings me to the next thing I was going to ask, and that's about flexibility that you've built into the application here and the additional days that you've listed in terms of bank holidays, and also the note about ad hoc other occasions, be it sporting or other, I can't remember what wording is used, apologies, but it sounds to me so that you can be responsive and use your license on days that aren't currently covered by the license or outside it. Can you just explain how you plan to arrive at that, how you plan that will work when the additional days which currently fall outside the current permitted hours.
I think that was a throwback from the previous surrendered license, and I think that so it would be as if there was a Rugby World Cup and we needed to open at 8 o'clock, we would notify the police that we wanted to do it. So I think it's more that they were the types of conditions that were on licenses when they were converted. And the reality of those points of national interest is that they are actually to open earlier, that no one's ever used there. In my 20 years experience of licensing, it's very rare that any of those are used for any of the later hours. It's more for things where, especially Rugby World Cup or World Cups, where they are in a time zone where the matches kick off at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
So that's the flexibility that's built into that. And I think previously when there were World Cups years ago, there was an actual law passed where everyone could open early. But the reality of that specific condition is just for flexibility to open up earlier if there is a national tournament or something where the time zones allow for that.
Okay. Okay. Angela, any questions?
Yes, my question is performance of dance. Can you explain that to me more briefly, please? It's very vague.
In the sense of the licensable activity performance of dance. I think, again, I think it'd be very rare that we would have a dance performance, but the kind of performance that it would be traditional dance is that we're not suddenly turning into, but if there's anything where any professional performers or dancers were on a stage or wanted to use the garden for anything, that we would need to be licensed for it. But the likelihood is of any kind of performance of dance would be kind of folk traditional dance rather than anything else. I don't think we're going so, but again, that is just one of the activities from the previous license. It's just to have flexibility. I can ask Mr. Pinder, in reality, how many times have you had performance of dance in any of your other premises?
Not much at all. The other place that we've got is the Beck and Call, and I think we are down to get some Morris dancers in at some point, but that still hasn't happened yet. But that's the sort of thing. I mean, we have to cater for the community. We're, like now we're saying, we would only ever do that sort of thing. There's no point in bringing something that's just not going to work for us.
Okay. Any further questions from the subcommittee?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Any further questions from the subcommittee at all?
Not from me.
Okay.
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm okay, thank you.
I think I am as well at this point. So in that case, the subcommittee will now move into, did you want to sum up? We left some time over, didn't we, Mr. Ford, for you to sum up if necessary?
Yeah, very, very briefly. I think that obviously you have considered the application. I think it is important in these times to allow businesses to reopen and to provide employment in the local area. As I said, we are intending to open this as a community pub, and that we wouldn't want to do anything that would cause concerns for local residents. And I think the other thing is just to stress that if you do grant the application as applied for, we still then have to set noise levels with the noise team and go back to the planning officers with the materials and the windows. And so there are lots of other things that need to go back in, which will be scrutinized prior to the premises opening to the public. So you have reassurance that this will be an extremely well operated, constructed and run premises by an experienced licensee.
Okay, thank you. So the subcommittee will now move into private session to deliberate on the application. Could I ask that all parties, including the applicant and their representative and the licensing officer, remain available should the subcommittee have any additional questions? And if there are any additional questions, you'll be invited back into the meeting by the clerk. And I'm handing over now to the clerk.
Thank you, Chair. So John, could you just put us into the breakout room and we'll...
Okay.
Hello? I can't hear or see you all at the moment. At the moment, what I've got on my screen is you are viewing Harriet's bite screen, and it comes up view options.
Well, I can hear you, Angela. Can you hear me? It's Billy.
I think now that Angela's back in the call, I think governance are going to try and reset the rooms as they need to be. So we'll just hold tight for a minute longer. Hello, everyone. So we're just popping, thank you for your patience through all the technical work that we had to do. So we've discussed rather a lot. We're just popping back to just ask a couple more questions of you, if we can, Mr. Ford and Mr. Pinder. So just to help us with our decision, there's a couple of things we need to ask. Could you give us a bit more detail about whether you have a clarified or agreed definition of the section in the additional, where you talk about events of national importance or sporting interest? What limits are we putting on that? Like, what would you? I know you mentioned, for example, Rugby World Cup matches in different continents which start early in the morning or whatever. But what definition would you be working to of what counts as an event of national importance or even local importance, if that's what you wanted to say? In the, you know, if you could let me know what you think about that.
Mr. Pinto, do we want to just add the word sporting? Would that be sufficient?
Yeah, I think so. Sporting is fine. Yeah.
So if we add international sporting, would that add clarification?
So it would read along lines of events of international sporting importance.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, I mean, there are other things though, aren't there? What have we done before? I'm sure we've done one other or two other. No, maybe not. Maybe not. All right, leave it just at sporting then.
Okay, because obviously the discussion we've been having is where how easily would that allow you to you know use the space, and we want to make sure that we understand fully what the space is being licensed for, etc. So that's helpful. Thank you. And then just another question about the layout of the car park, if I can. So we've been on the plan that you've provided and also looked at that on Google Earth. And could you just confirm? So I'm sorry if this is hard to follow. There's a sort of L shape to the car park, and obviously the longer bit of it is the bulk of where the car parking space is. The little bit that comes down to Church Street, that's the vehicular access into the car park, isn't it? If you could, I hope you can understand what I mean by that.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so there is no vehicle. The only access that you're getting into the pub is at the back there through Church Mews. That's how you get in, get out. The other access will be effectively blocked up. We do, as part of the planning consent, we do have to put gates on there to show that it was originally an opening. So that will be blocked off effectively. There'll be no vehicular access through that very narrow bit. At the back there, so I don't know if that makes sense. You can see the bollards as well, so there should be some bollards depending on which plan you're looking at. I think it's on both the licensing and the planning application. You can see the little bollards marked out at the back there to stop vehicles going any further, coming in from the other side, from Church Mews.
Right, so let me just double check. Okay, so there will be bollards on the Church Mews side.
Yeah, so, effectively, but it's right at the other end of the car park, obviously.
Yeah. So sorry, can you confirm, will there be vehicular access from Church Mews or from Church Street?
Just Church Mews only.
Just Church Mews, and it'll be in that section which is shown on the plan, and it will be, did you say that bit would be gated?
The gated bit is on Church Street.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, and could you just describe, I mean, we're looking at, I'm looking at Google Maps at the minute, it could have been taken a while ago. Can you describe what the boundary is like? It looks like there's a wall along the top side, and then it looks like there's, I can't really see. If you could just explain what the boundary is like around the car park, because from what we can see, there's a wall and obviously there's another property.
Yeah, okay, all right. So running parallel with Church Mews at our side you can see there's like there is a high wall that's probably 8 foot high on the left-hand side, if that makes sense, as you were looking at the plan the right way.
Yeah.
The rest, the car park boundary, is all just timber fencing around the outside. Now, most of that is well, defunct. It's falling down. It's rotten. So the actual perimeter will be replacing with timber fencing again.
Okay.
Of the car park.
Okay. Okay. I think unless either of my colleagues have any further questions at this point, I think we'll go back into closed session and hopefully not be too much longer.
It was about how much of the that L-shaped licensing area is not clear where precisely it covers from the pub.
Oh yes, sorry. So what's on the plan that's been submitted, the bold line, which is the licensing area, is that the whole of the footprint of the car park as we see here?
Yeah, it is. I think it is.
Okay. Okay. So I think we're ready to go back into closed session. If my colleagues both agree, and then we shouldn't be. Sorry, Billy, go on.
Yeah, just a quick one. So you mean you want the whole of the car park to be licensed for alcohol?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right.
The noise team have suggested lots of conditions covering the activities in the car park, which have been accepted. So it is very heavily conditioned that it wouldn't cause any disturbance to local residents if you look at the accepted conditions, if that's helpful.
Yeah, we've been looking at those alongside what we're just trying to get completely clear what the application footprint, the licensing area would be. That's fine. Okay. Right, unless Billy or Angela have any other questions, I think we're happy to go back into our discussion, and we'll
No questions. No.
try not to keep you too much longer. Hi everyone. I'm just making sure everyone's popped back up and everyone's on. Okay, thank you for bearing with us throughout those discussions, and thank you for answering our questions. Thank you for your attendance. What we're going to do now, this concludes the business of the meeting, and we didn't want to keep you obviously any longer. So what we're going to do now is confirm our decision, and you'll be informed of the decision within 5 working days. So this now concludes the meeting, and thank you again for your time and for speaking with us.